Okay, well, let's start the session for today. And a very good afternoon to anybody attending. Today's session is focused on outbound key performance indicators, their use in contact centers, very important metrics that we're all measured by if we're in the industry. And that'll be the focus of our session for today. Now, outbound campaigns, outbound dialing can be a very rewarding but quite a tough business. It's not for everybody. There's many metrics that are used in outbound campaigns and outbound dialing. We're going to discuss those. We're going to look at some best practices, some use cases. So there'll be some useful information, I hope, in this session for you today. But before we start, really, we should introduce ourselves. That's the only polite thing to do at this point. So let me introduce myself. I'm Gavin Stewart. I'm a channel sales manager for VCC Live, based here in Budapest in Hungary. I've been in the communication call center and contact center industry for 25 years. First of all, working with on-premise type solutions, and in recent years working with cloud solutions.
And welcome everyone. Thanks for joining. My name is Barnabas Blenesi. I've been with VCC for more than 5 years now, and actually I had the opportunity to work in multiple customer-facing positions. But in my current position as a solution consultant, I hold demo sessions to potential new clients and partners. I supervise the onboarding of new clients. And I also help with process optimization, and I oversee integration projects as well.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Barney. Let me kick this off with a bit of an introduction. And outbound is a tough game. I said that earlier, and we're going to use a few quotes to kind of highlight that, to set the scene. And these quotes come from the Pew Research Center, which is a kind of a world-renowned research center. So they're an interesting organization they're coming from. But to the point, according to research, roughly 80% of calls from unidentified numbers go unanswered. That's true for myself, I have to be honest. And that is pretty scary if we are trying to cold call customers for telesales opportunities. Or the customer may recognize the number of the 20%. They may recognize the number and choose not to answer. So it's a tough game. Let's look at the next set of statistics here. It takes on average 1.5 hours of cold calling per day for 5 days to win one appointment. Now, I guess it depends on the country and the business you're in, the industry you're in, but still, it takes a lot of hard work of cold calling to actually win appointments. We could argue over the details, but you get the point. A lot of work goes into it. And finally, last quote that I've pulled out here, over 30%, almost a third of consumers report being called at what they consider to be inconvenient times. So not only they may not be wanting our calls, we're calling them potentially at an inconvenient time in the opinion of the consumer, the recipient of these calls. So it's a tough business, yet there's a lot to be done with this business. And those of you that have had to make cold calls, have had that experience sometime in your career, you may relate to the sentiment on this graphic, because it captures a certain moment for many of us. So what makes outbound still a good choice? Because there's very good reasons for it, and you can argue that outbound is more impactful. I've got a question mark there. It could be a discussion, but there's a fair argument that it's more impactful than inbound. Maybe purchases and telesales and debt collection. We could have a discussion over that. Outbound is great for fast purchases, large volume of calls, maybe those business to consumer, business to the end customer type facing, where we're making many calls, boom, 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 lots and lots and lots of calls. So it can be very good in that particular space. And outbound is great if your timing is right. If you can get that Goldilocks type timing, as I like to think of it. There's that sweet spot or that window. So the example I'm using here is the expiring car insurance. So if you can call that client at just the right window, you're providing a service to them. You're telling them that their car insurance is going to expire, and they may be grateful that you've notified them, and they're in a position where they want to solve a problem, and you're in a position to help them. Great. Everybody's going to be happy at that point. You're at the right time, the right person, you're solving their problem, and very likely, not 100%, but very likely that you're going to make that sale there or complete that business. Now let's flip that over, call it the wrong time. The customer may not be ready. Customer, you've just put in their mind to go check other competitors. Call them too late. Maybe they're already checking other competitors. So can you find that Goldilocks zone? If you can be just right. When you got that customer on the phone for that outbound call, it's an opportunity to cross-sell, to upsell them, to sell them more stuff or more services. That's a great opportunity. And that may fly in the face of some of your metrics. Some of your metrics may say, oh, we want the talk time to be X or no greater than Y. But on the other hand, if we're selling stuff to that end customer, you may be delighted. You may be just delighted. Everybody carries on, sell more things to that end customer. And a final bullet, outbound is great when you've got a good, strong database. That campaign database has got, well, clean data, clean numbers in it. That's really, really powerful if you've got that good database of numbers. Another factor, can you segment those numbers, but with some criteria, and it varies, but some criteria of importance. Maybe in this time period, these geographical areas are more important, or these age groups are more, however you segment it. But if you can use an importance factor and call those people first, or call them at the right time, back to my previous point, that can be very powerful indeed. So let's look at some of the common use cases for outbound calling. This is just a selection, but it'll give us an idea of some of the things, and no doubt we could add more to it, but let's not overburden ourselves just here. So for collections, debt collection, common use case. Collections in general, common use case for outbound calling. Expiry notifications. This harks back to my previous example of the car insurance that was expiring, and we managed to speak to that end customer at just the right point. Reminders. That can be seen as, again, a benefit to that end customer. We're going to remind them of something. Maybe ties into expiry notifications. Appointments. Again, a service for that end customer. And not only that, it's a cost saving to the business. So if you're in a business where you have a cost for those appointments, where no shows represents a cost to the business, or you send a service truck to a customer location and the customer's not there, it has a very real cost to the business. So there's two sides to that. Surveys. Common use of outbound calling, discounts, offers, event invites, again, to drive that event business, get people to sign up, get people to perhaps take a different package for the event, and market research, another quite common use case. Again, I'm not capturing everything, it's just to give us a sense of some of the common use cases for outbound calling. Now, in the contact center, we're all aware of this, be it inbound or outbound, everything is measured. Every which way we can, we measure it. and we judge ourselves against those measurements. And outbound is no different. Outbound needs a set of measurements. We need to measure ourselves against those. It may have a slightly different focus because it's a different vertical, a different industry, a different niche. There is a difference there. Sure, that's reasonable to say, but everything is going to be measured, and we're going to want to be able to provide the relevant data to the business on that. Now, there's going to be a certain set of standard metrics, KPIs, key performance indicators, that you're going to use, commonly used in the industry, but that selection of those may vary by vertical or by particular industry. There's also another factor to be considered: customized KPIs. So your business needs, your niche, what you do may require customized KPIs. So how are we going to address that? So that's another factor to consider. Can you be measured across those? And to get back to the point of all of this, the main drivers here are for efficiency and productivity of those agents, to increase the telesales, to increase the collections, to make everything as efficient and productive as possible. And how we're going to be measured is those KPIs, those metrics. We're going to have to report to our senior management or to different parts of the business how well we're achieving our business goals. And the guide to that, the measuring tape to that, are the metrics and the KPIs that we use. Fairly perhaps self-evident, but I just want to put that out on the table. Now, there are best practices, lessons to be learned, and Barney's going to share some insights that he has, best practices, use cases from other customers, because we can learn from our peers in the industry. But again, I think it's reasonable to say that your business is probably slightly different to their business. There's a difference there. You can learn from the best practices of others, but it's very likely that you're going to need to refine those particular practices, what's exactly right for your business, and that will allow you to excel. That will allow you to have a competitive advantage over your own competitors. So with that, let me hand it over.
Thank you, Gavin. Yeah, so on this first slide, we can see a long list of KPIs in connection with outbound. Some of them may be self-explanatory, some may less so, but all of them can be equally important to companies that run outbound call center operations. Their importance always depends on what we want to achieve and also what business results we want to improve. Obviously, I won't go into too much detail about all of them. Unfortunately, one session would not be enough to cover everything, but I have chosen a few that I thought are particularly important. And the first one is the talk time. I think we can agree that the most important part of a phone call is the actual conversation between the agent and the customers or potential customers. This is when we have the opportunity to achieve the goal of our call, whether it is to sell a product or a service, to collect a debt, or to conduct market research. This is the most important part of the conversation. The next one is reachability or call pickup rate, as this shows how much of our calls are answered by the recipients. Obviously, only these answered calls can have successful outcomes. So this is a metric that we should always aim to keep as high as possible. The third one for today is average handling time. This is a kind of a multi-KPI, as it consists of multiple separate metrics. It includes the talk time, but other times spent in other statuses as well by the agents, in addition to the call, such as pre-work or post-call work, wrap-up and administrative phases. So by improving any of these, we may have positive effects on average handling time as well. And last but not least, the dropped call rate. This one may be an odd one out, as it's, for one, it's a predictive dialing mode specific KPI, but also one that we definitely want to decrease at all times. Otherwise, it can have pretty severe consequences. So yeah, this is a picture of me from a couple of weeks ago, trying to decide which metrics I should talk about today. But jokes aside, it is easy to get lost in all the statistics reports provided by contact center solutions. So I think the first step is to set clear and realistic business goals. And from there, we can begin to identify the metrics that are the most important to us, and then to start think about different ways to improve them. So I hope that this presentation will shed some light on such tools and best practices. So let's begin with talk time. I think it's pretty obvious what it means. This metric simply explains the time a call center agent spends talking to the customers over a call or within an hour. And this KPI has a particular duality, I think, because we typically want to increase and decrease it at the same time. And by that, I mean that we usually want to increase the amount of time an agent spends talking to customers in an hour. But at the same time, we also want to reduce, or at least optimize, the time agents spend talking per call. Obviously, the goal is to reach as many customers or potential customers as possible. There is no set formula to determine a good average talk time. It largely depends on the characteristics of the project, whether we do telesales, telemarketing, debt collection, service, and it also depends on whether we call existing clientele or new potential clients, and also the dialing method itself. In general, there's a strong difference between talk time regarding the different dialing modes, with an average of around 18 minutes for manual dialing, around 27 minutes for power dialing. But with a well-configured predictive dialer, we can also reach 40 plus minutes per hour under ideal circumstances. So usually, if you want to improve talk time or want to increase the talk time in an hour, the first tool that we have is switching to predictive dialing. For example, I had the chance to work together with a client working in telesales who managed to increase the average talk time from 22 minutes to 39 per hour by switching to predictive dialing combined with a fine-tuned answering machine detection feature. On the other hand, if we want to reduce the talk time per call, we can do so by either optimizing the scripts. A lot of times, a more simple script is better. A script that is either too long or too complex may discourage potential customers, and it is also very time consuming for agents. But also we can provide continuous training and coaching to our teams, and not necessarily just about our contact center solution itself, but sales training as well. We can make their sales pitch better, which can in the end result in more successful outcomes over a shorter time. So moving on to reachability or call answer rate. This KPI measures the percentage of attempted calls that are answered by the recipients. It is commonly used to evaluate the effectiveness of outbound campaigns. Obviously, the higher call answer rate means that more leads are answering our calls, more agents can engage in conversations, and that may lead to more sales conversions. Interestingly, the average call rate is around 2-3%, but in general, for outbound activities or outbound telesales companies, the average rate between 25-35% is typically considered a good value. This number can vary based on different factors, such as industry, targeted market segments, and also whether we call existing clientele or potentially new clients, so cold calling. In telesales, reachability tends to be higher, but usually, for example, in that collection, where, let's face it, we call customers who do not want to be called, reachability tends to be much lower. So for that reason, in that collection, it is actually a common practice to change phone numbers, caller IDs at fixed intervals, bi-monthly, quarterly, every half a year, as called parties tend to remember and put phone numbers on block lists or just simply not answer the calls. So if you want to improve the reachability, it is essential to have a smart dialing strategy. Using mobile phone numbers, or in case of landline numbers, local area codes, and also using multiple phone numbers are all ways to increase our reachability. And also, before starting a new outbound campaign, a preliminary database cleansing can also help by removing numbers that are not allocated to customers or are in incorrect format. Using automated predictive dialing can also boost outbound campaigns and their reachability by calling clients at optimal times. Some solutions can schedule calls based on previous unsuccessful attempts and then dial the potential customers at different times, in the morning, during lunch, or in the afternoon, increasing the chance that the call will be answered. And also contacting customers on other channels before picking up the phone is also a way to prepare them for a call. For example, sending them an SMS or an email reminder about an outstanding debt or some kind of an order. We can prepare them for a call. So it's important to keep in mind that we need a clear dialing strategy. Calling too often or at the wrong times can make customers and prospects lose trust. It can cause frustration, hurt your brand reputation, or even cause compliance issues. And our third KPI for today is the average handling time. So average handling time usually includes the talk time itself, obviously, but as I've said earlier, it includes other time spent in other statuses, such as pre-work, after call work, but also hold times. And usually 6 minutes is considered to be a good average handle time across industries. But just as for the talk time, there's no universal good value for average handling time that applies to all call centers. The optimal average handling time depends on various factors, such as the type of outbound activity that we do, telesales, collection, conducting market research, also the call types, whether we call new clients, existing clientele, or we may call VIP clients who also expect special care and attention. So we may want to spend more time with them, obviously, in order for them to feel valued customers. Also, individual agent performance has effects on average handling time. If you think about more experienced colleagues versus newcomers, and also the amount of administrative tasks the agents have to do can have serious effects on average handling time. So we should definitely factor in all of these characteristics when we set a target value for ourselves in order to have realistic expectations. And we should also be careful when considering lowering average handle time, as a lower value doesn't necessarily equate to higher efficiency or better customer experience. If during a sales call, a potential customer feels that the agent is really pushy, is just rushing through the call, and has nothing else but the closing of the sale in mind, then it can be counterproductive. So if we manage to decrease average handling time and customer satisfaction and or the conversion rates also increase, or at least stay on the same level, then I think we can say that we are on the right track. But if we really want to reduce average handling time, we can do or have the following options. First of all, reducing the administrative burden on agents. It can have great effects on average handling time. It can greatly shorten. And also, the agents can focus more on the actual conversation, the customer. They can be more engaged in that conversation instead of doing all kinds of administrative tasks. And usually, among other things, this can be done by utilizing the integration capabilities of our contact center solution. By integrating our platform with CRM, ERP, or debt loan management systems, the relevant data can flow automatically between these systems. And then we can reduce the time agents spend on core-related tasks. For example, I worked with a debt collection company who managed to decrease average handling time by almost 2 minutes on average by integrating their CC platform with their in-house developed loan management system. And obviously, this saved a lot of time for the agents by eliminating duplicated administrative tasks. But also, they managed to increase successful debt collections simultaneously. And another tool that we have is monitoring and analyzing live calls, usually done by admins, supervisors. And doing that, they can provide agent-specific training, shedding light maybe on areas that can be improved, or maybe bad habits that lead to lengthier calls. And our last KPI for today is dropped call rate. So generally speaking, predictive dialers are mostly used in high volume call centers where time and quantity are the most important factors, and where the aim is to reach the highest possible agent efficiency. And while using predictive dialing can indeed greatly increase agent talk time and the number of handled calls, if we are not careful and we overtune the dialer, so to say, then this can come with the unwanted consequences of increasing the dropped call rate. So basically, a dropped call is when a prospect picks up the phone, there are no available agents to handle the interaction. They will hear a silence on the other hand, prompting them to hang up, which may also lead to frustration on the client's end. It can lead to poor customer experience, but also in more serious cases, compliance issues and complaints. I think every call center should aim to keep the drop call rate as low as possible. And for this, I think balance is the key word. When using voicemail detection feature, I think it's important to fine-tune it as much as possible to avoid false positives, which can also result in drop calls. And usually this is done together with the CC solution provider in the early phases of the implementation. But the first thing that we can do usually is to appropriately configure our dialer parameters in our solution, optimizing the dialing speed to match agent availability. Usually this requires continuous monitoring and adjusting from supervisors or key users, usually at the beginning of outbound campaigns. And we should not forget that sometimes the issue just comes down to insufficient staffing levels. So we have to make sure that we employ a sufficient number of agents in order for the predictive dialer to work efficiently without generating too many dropped calls, because maybe the problem is that there are not enough available agents.
Barney,
and
I believe in some countries there are even compliance regulations that that limit, or there could be penalties as a consequence. So it's even regulated from a compliance point of view.
Exactly, Gavin. Thanks for pointing that out. You're exactly right. So the aim is usually to keep the dropped call rate as low as possible, or at least below 3-2%. It's important to know the features of our dialing system. So some solutions In some solutions, inappropriate handling of break codes can also generate unwanted dropped calls. So obviously, this can be KPI or metric can be increased by mistake because of user error as well. But on the other hand, some solutions have built-in fail-safes which aim to keep the dropped call rate below 3% by default. For example, there are features that make sure that the calls to the same number cannot be dropped twice in a row, because the call gets dedicated to an agent if it was already dropped once. So moving on to the next topic, basically I just want to share a general advice with you, as now that almost everything can be tracked and measured in CC solutions, contact center solutions, it is really easy to get overwhelmed by all the metrics and KPIs. In reality, it's definitely not a one size fits all kind of situation. As for many KPIs, there are no universally good results, as I've said before. They depend on industry, call center type and size, internal processes that the agents have to follow, and many, many other factors. So instead of tracking everything mindlessly and comparing the results to our competitors or general industry benchmarks without a general idea of what we want to achieve, we should do the following, at least I think. First of all, we need clearly defined realistic business objectives, measure our performance, identify the problematic areas that we wish to improve. If we are struggling with this step, we can seek the help of industry experts, and then we need to think about ways we can improve our metrics or results, whether it by optimizing processes, automation, specialized agent training, or simply hiring more agents if possible, or maybe changing technology, implementing new solutions. And after that, we need to measure again, compare the results, then draw our conclusion. It's very much a trial and error process, but at the end of the day, we need to figure out what works for us. And that leads to the current topic of customized KPIs. So there may be situations where the default metrics are just simply not sufficient, not enough, and we need something more. And this is where custom KPIs come into the picture. Some solutions allow the customization of our own KPIs that enable the tracking of results that are very specific to us, that are usually closely linked to our own specific business objectives. For example, some clients are more interested in exact figures, some prefer percentages, or are interested in certain thresholds, or they want to check results for specific time intervals, and custom KPIs can help with all of that. Custom KPIs can be, for example, product-specific sales figures, sales data, for example, product type, number of sold pieces during a call, which we can then use to expand our reports and statistics. Also, using different filtering parameters available in our contact center solution, we can define custom data sources and get aggregated results for maybe multiple campaigns or specific agent groups. Or we can simply group together results based on wrap-up code level that are different or differentiated, but still somewhat similar, and we would like to see them summarized based on certain criteria. And we can also once again utilize integration capabilities regarding custom KPIs by connecting our contact center platform to BI solutions. We can make even more advanced reports that are not necessarily available in our dialer system by default. For example, I have worked with a client for whom we have integrated our system with Google Looker Studio, and then we were able to develop campaign and product specific tiered commission calculation systems for them, which is obviously a pretty specific requirement.
All right, well, we're coming to the close of our presentation for today, and let's look at some predictions, really questions here. And I'll mention something first and then hand over to Barney for his comments. And I would call out the second point here. So we may all be asking ourselves, is cold calling going to remain relevant? Is it going to go away, or will it become fully automated? It's certainly a question that might cross your mind. My own personal view, no, it's not going to go away, but I do think it will change. We are seeing robots in the mix, so there may be a certain point where a real agent is talking to an end customer, and then the completion of that sale is handled by a robot. When we've convinced the customer that they wish to purchase something, the part of the process will be handed over to a robot, or even potentially to a different channel of communication. Doesn't have to remain as voice. It could move to some other mode of communication. Barney, what would you call out on the slide?
Yeah, thanks, Gavin. Actually, that's a good point and a good or an interesting question. And I think so. Whether cold calling is outdated or not, I think it has been a source of endless debates by or among industry experts for many years already. Even without AI getting as prominent as it is today. But I think that despite all the new ways of communication and all the technological advancements, cold calling, when done right, is still an effective sales strategy, even in 2024. So I think it's safe to say that cold calling is still going to be relevant for the foreseeable future. Probably it will evolve because of AI, or maybe its relevancy will dwindle, but it will definitely not go away completely. I think AI can help us optimize workflows, automate certain actions. It can also provide better data analysis, help us better understand customer behavior. But for now, its main purpose is to enhance and improve the life of work of live agents, and not to replace them. So I think the human touch is still very much required to provide personalized customer experiences and to be efficient in sales. I think rather than AI, what could threaten the relevance of cold calling is actually the generational shift that we are seeing with Gen Z and Gen Alpha, who are much more likely to prefer other digital communication channels, chat, instant messaging platforms, because they tend to consume concise written information much more. So I think it's very important to take a varied approach to outbound, combining different channels, because at the end of the day, the future is in the hands of these new generations.
Excellent. Well, certainly food for thought there. And at this point, I'm going to draw our session for today to a close. I'd like to thank you for your attention. If you've got any questions that you'd like to raise with Barney or myself, please do reach out to us on LinkedIn or whatever other communication channel most suits you. And Barney, I'll leave the last word to you.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining today. I hope it was interesting, and we really hope to see you again in a future session.